I'm Sonny Gillisen. I'm working at Rubicon now for 1.5 years as a cluster lead integration and integration architect. And what I want to talk to you about is basically what it means to be a guardian of the context and how we're going to get there. But first, I want to make it, at least I try to make it very cinematic, because Guardians of the Galaxy is a movie. My introduction on the MIUG LinkedIn was also very cinematic, but that's actually not me, so I'm just going to present it the way I think it should be. But still, in this world where we're overflowed with signals, right? We have billions of systems. We just heard about IoT, and it's getting more and more and more. So that's one of the overloads. Next to that, AI is everywhere nowadays. It's not even the question, it's not even a future view anymore. It's here today, and it was already there yesterday. And integration is basically becoming the new power. In the previous session we already heard that integration is very important, and I think in the age of AI it's the most important factor. But with all this intelligence that's in our hands at this moment, we're missing basically one important thing with AI. Anyone an idea what that could be? No? Context. That's what actually makes the difference here. And when you come to think of it, we as integration specialists, consultants, architects, doesn't matter, for us it changed as well. Because we used to connect the system, right? We connect A to B or A to A or whatever. That was what we were used to be doing. And along the way, a message appeared and maybe it had to be transformed, and obviously that's very flat, we do more than that, but still it's the main of what we do. And we have to make sure that it's reliable, right? In the previous presentation, there was also with the retry panels, we have to make sure that everything we do works and works reliable. But the world has changed, because this is what we were using, what we used to do. But nowadays, integrations got democratized. And I know that's a pretty term, right? But it actually means that it's not our thing anymore, it's a thing of everyone. Everyone is doing integrations at this point. Everyone has it by hand, everyone has the availability of AI. So we're in a tech where it's democratized in that way that everybody has it available right now. And automations are also at hand. Everyone can do their own thing. And that makes the stitching of the A to B connections very easy, not only for us, but for everyone. But that raises the question, where does that leave us, right? We as integration specialists, consultants, architects, what do we bring to the field? And I think the main answer is context. That's still our role. And when you come to think of it, that Azure Integration Services itself, we always refer to it as being technology, right? It's Azure, it's cool, it does some code, it still reads the zeros and ones, but actually, integration service shouldn't be seen as a technology anymore. Maybe we should see it as an organism. And maybe, and I want to see hands, maybe that feels exaggerated. Who does feel that way? I hope so. Bear with me. So when you come to think of it, if, let's say the Azure Integration Services combined with AI makes an organism, right? We've got a heartbeat, so service bus. It's just like our own heart. It sends messages throughout the system so that our muscles receive oxygen, for example. And we have a sensory system. The event grid can respond to stuff that happens. We also got some reflexes, a logic app that can respond to signals from the sensory system, but it doesn't work without the heartbeat, so there's the orchestration coming. And we have some muscles for the heavy lifting. Maybe a logic app isn't the best fit. We could also use a function for that. And of course, we've got our voice and ears, we've got our input and output, and that's our API management. In some cases, biologically, this already makes an organism because it's alive in a sense. But where the actual power comes from is the AI. It's our brain. And the brain comes with some sort of behavior, because you throw something at it and it responds to that. And not the way we programmed it to respond, but the way it wants to respond. So let's put that to the test, because I still see some doubting faces. Let's say we've got AI, and we ask AI, can you create a castle? If you do this in a regular program, the technology doesn't return anything unless you tell it what to return. But with AI, it draws a castle. It knows what you mean by that. Obviously, these were 3 different chats with the same prompt, and it still generates something different. It's not the actual same result, so it's not reusable in a way. But if we make it a bit more specific, so okay, I wanted to make it in the style of this presentation, because otherwise my OCD will kick in, and it doesn't look pretty. So I made it a castle, but neon styled, with an abstract drawing and 4 towers and a gate, because you have to enter it. Then it already becomes a bit more in line with what you want to see. Obviously, AI is not good in counting always, because it has 5 towers, but still, as long as you provide it more information, it gets more and more reliable, reusable, and less abstract. So there's one thing very important. Now anyone who wants to try it? There we go. So context is key here. And if you look at what could AI do and what should we do, then if you look at AI, sure, it can help with integration patterns. We had a topic about patterns before. That's structured. We can do that. Mapping and transformation is also something that AI can be quite good at, actually. Also, document generation is something that maybe we are not very fond with, but must be done somewhere, so why not use AI for that? And anomaly detection. So when something happens, in the case of an event, respond to that. That's also something that AI can do. But that's kind of the limit at some points, because what AI cannot do is handle ambiguity. In our field, with consultants, ambiguity is always a nasty thing. We have to make sure that it's what we say is what we mean. And AI isn't very good in making that difference. It's also not very good in ethics. Whether it's work ethic or other ethics, it's not always the best fit for AI. Culture is the same, because we have our cultural differences, and even when you come to think of it, in the Netherlands alone, every 5 kilometers has a different culture. AI doesn't know jack. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. And the same with priorities, because basically those 3, or maybe let's say those 2, will have an impact on the priority. And that brings us to some sort of conclusion. Maybe it's not a conclusion, but I thought it would fit the location where we are at. AIS, so our technology does provide structure. AI provides the acceleration on that structure, but to humans, they provide the context. So the guardians of the context, that is basically who will meet in the new day, or let's say maybe not the new day because it's already an old day. As I mentioned, AI was there yesterday and will be there tomorrow. But what does it take to be a guardian of the context? What do you need? What do you bring to the field then? You have to understand the business needs. So you don't have to respond to what the business asks. You have to check what the business means. And that's the difference that AI isn't always good in differentiating. Of course, you have to always balance purpose and automation. It's been a balancing act for ages already, because you can automate everything. The question is whether you should. And you have to maintain the ethics and empathy, because obviously we're human, we have a feeling. We want to have a good feeling, and it's not up to AI to decide that. So that's where we come in. And it has to obviously reflect reality and don't do any assumptions, and that's also where the ambiguity comes in. We want to make sure that it's actually what we would like to have. So therefore, we let AIS still handle the integration. It's good at that, why not use it? But AI is going to handle the information and make sure that everything we did not automate with code and structures, that it's still handled in a nice way, but the humans will make the meaning. And who's the guardians of the context? Well, basically, it's you guys, it's me, it's our field. I think that we should always keep touch with the actual context that we're living in. What should an integration do? What should we let AI do? And how do we make sure that everything AI does is also in line with what we want it to be? So therefore, context is actually the key part here. And that already maybe concludes my presentation, but maybe after the break it's a good thing. So, are there any questions on that behalf? Everybody's baffled and thinks, whoa. Yeah, woo, yeah.
So okay. A lot of this context stuff, a lot of it is in functional design and a bit in technical design architecture as well. So, but not a lot of it is in the actual coding part. So do you think that within the next couple of years this coding part is just going to completely be out of our hands, or is there still a job for us there as well?
I believe that it's not completely out of our hands. And what I mean by that, I had a case with, next to my work at Rubicon, I have my own company and I build websites in WordPress, and there was this bike shop owner who said, I have a sort of ERP and I wanted to be connected to WordPress. So I thought, why not vibe code it? Because that's cool. And I thought I'd do it in Copilot and not Copilot in GitHub Copilot, and it makes you wonder why. Because I thought Copilot is available to everyone. It's accessible, it's easy, right? And it did a pretty good job, but at the first run, it clones all items from the ERP to the web shop, and then I deleted and it deleted everything that was already in my web shop. That's where the context comes in, because I wanted to be managed for those parts that I wanted to manage, and leave the rest aside. So I think on that behalf, it did a great job 95% of the time, but handle the actual meaning, I think we're still working on code. However, I do believe that the amount of code that we're going to write is significantly dropping in the coming weeks, months. Yeah, it already is happening now, and I think it will accelerate even further. So at the end, we're maybe not writing the actual code from scratch, which is cool, because before you can actually start a project, you have to first set the base and think about logging and do all the business, all the stuff around it. So before you nowadays can actually start writing code, you've got a project of a week maybe to set everything up, and then you can bring that down to an hour and then start your actual job. So it shifts focus. But I do think that it's still equally important. And of course, you have to check your code, because that's also a thing. It does do a pretty good job in writing code, and it depends on the model you use, how good that code is, but it also produces a lot of rubbish. And you have to be aware of that. Because if something happens in your code, it may be a good thing that you can check it with a human. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Anyone else, maybe?
Yeah. What role do you see AI fill within the context of integrations? Because you said like the more dynamic part to add AI. Could you give some examples?
Yeah, well, basically the case I just referred to, in this case, well, let me start at the beginning. It depends. It's a consultancy answer, I know, sorry, I'm consultant. But it depends on what role you see for AI, because actually the reason why I called it an organism is because it could be a coworker, could also be an intern, could be an expert. So it depends on your scenario basically, on how you add AI to the mix. And that's where the context comes in, because you have to tell it, you're an experienced developer, so you know you've got these bases. So another example is I described a CSS agent. I told it you're an experienced CSS agent. I want you to use these sources to make sure that you're not going to hallucinate on stuff that aren't existing. So that's where you set the context, and that's for that project where you put it. But as I mentioned, it depends. So where you want to use it and where you should.
To leave the authorization alone.
Authorization is always a thing with agents. It's getting better, but yeah, it's yeah, I know we're getting there slowly but surely. So let's hope we're not going to be the next Odido. No, this was a human, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, so maybe at that point it was a good idea to add AI.
Would have been better.
Anyone else with a question, maybe, or a remark, or no? No more further questions? Thank you.